television cameras, so welcome to folks who are just tuning in for the regular 8 o'clock meeting. And Jerry, if you could just take attendance, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, welcome to the workshop meeting of Tuesday, September 5th. On a roll call, Councilman Troy?
Present.
Councilman Divany?
Here.
Councilman Valentine?
Here.
Councilman Batari?
Here.
Supervisor Stewart?
Here.
Would everybody please stand?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we're just going to try to keep our momentum going here. We have a lot of work to do tonight. We have more budget presentations, and we have a workshop agenda with a number of items that the town board may want to discuss. Just at the top of the list, I wanted to note that our September 11th, our annual ceremony, is taking place, as it always does, on September 11th, overseen by the police department. So folks, please spread the word about that. And on September 16th is the Orangetown Police Department's open house. And there are a number of other items listed on the first page of our agenda tonight. Many of them have to do with our scheduled budget meetings and presentations. And so you can review that and see kind of where we need to get between now and when the supervisor's budget is due near the end of this month, and then through to the end of our final budget adoption. Meanwhile, maintaining a busy calendar of town operational decision-making that the town board has to address as we go along. So you're going to see a mixture of that tonight. I wanted we're going to get right back into budget presentations in a minute. We've got Nyack Ambulance here. Nyack Ambulance actually already made their presentation. We were fortunate to be able to get them in. Rockland Paramedics, South Orangetown Ambulance, Hightor just did their presentation, which is great. And we have our DEMI, Department of Environmental Management Engineering, which will be probably the longest of the discussions because it's quite a complex department in the town. So we have those lined up, but I wanted to start just with inviting our assessor, Brian Kenny, and Bill Beckman to come up to the podium and talk to the town board a little bit about the tax equalization issue as it relates to the split school districts with the Nanuet and the Nyack school districts, and the background, of course, being that due to various formulas, which you're going to try to explain to us, Orangetown residents were looking at an exorbitant tax increase relative to the Clarkstown residents in those split school districts. And if through a process that Brian and Bill can describe, we achieved a significant mitigation of that unfairness, but there's more work to do going forward. So Brian, if you would.
Well, New York State is about as complicated for tax purposes as it gets, and it's fractured. And in fact, it's broken, not to mention just high taxes to begin with. So that's number one. The problem is this town's a good example of what we have. We have school districts that circumvent towns, and they go from one town to the next. So the question is, how do you apportion taxes for a school budget in two different towns? And how it's done is through valuation. And so the richer town will pay more of the budget. And from year to year, that value can change based on what's they determine as equalization levels. And for many years, Clarkstown and Orangetown, through the market, and this is primarily sales of residences because that's most of the properties, through the market, the equalization has remained similar in both towns because it's a very similar neighborhood. The Nanuet, let's just take Nanuet for an example. The houses in Nanuet are very similar to the houses in Clarkstown in the Nanuet School District. However, New York State, in their wisdom, decided this year that the homes in Orangetown were 5% more valuable than the same kind of homes in Clarkstown. That was their trending number. So it ended out that Orangetown was going to pay a much larger share of the Nanuet school budget than they had previously the year before, and in fact for many years, as it relates to Clarkstown. So initially it was going to go up almost 15%, 14.38%, I believe, increase for the residents in Orangetown for Nanuet school taxes. This also affected Nyack because that is a split school district as well. they were going to go up almost 9%. I think it was 8.7. And Bill and we had Bill on board to do analysis for us, and we began this last December when initial numbers came out from New York State. And we saw that there was going to be a problem. So we met with them informally, and they have what's called pre-decisional collaboration meetings. And you go up and you go over to the White Plains Regional Office and you discuss the reasons for the valuation discrepancy. And we went through this, and we would go through the appraisals that the state used to determine market value differences. And to the life of us, we couldn't figure out how one town with the same kind of home can increase so much more in Orangetown versus Clarkstown. That's a good thing. We're happy that the state thinks that the market in Orangetown is so much greater. And perhaps that's true, but not to the extent that they said. So we went through the motions, we appealed this with them, and finally the last straw is going to state board meetings, which is sort of like going to the World Series or something. I mean, you're putting all your eggs in that basket because they were not going to do anything. They tweaked the numbers a little bit, and one of the main appraisals that they used to determine this equalization was also Pfizer, the Pfizer property, which is a very large part of the Nanuet district. So they overvalued that property. And we had Bill look at this sale. We argued with them in the meeting that the sale should have been used. They discounted that sale completely. So they had the property originally valued at $330 million, I believe, and then lowered it to $275, even though most of the property sold for $40 million. So there was a very large discrepancy. They're saying the property is worth $275, and most of it sold for $40. So there was something wrong with this picture. We just kept harping on that. And finally, in our state board meeting, we convinced the state board members that they should have used that sale as part of their calculations, which would have mitigated this. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. And Bill can give you some numbers as to what that means in taxes. But the bottom line is our equalization was going to be 44% according to the state. That was our tentative number, which would have meant these kinds of tax increases for the school budget. And we got that raised to 47.25 for this year, a 7.5% basically increase. That not only affects school taxes, that affects county apportionment coming up next January. And it also affects school state aid. So in a sense, you could argue that we gain 7.5% of school aid for our school districts. I don't have those figures in front of me. Those are obscure calculations the state uses. But I suppose if we added up the numbers and came up with the figure, it would probably be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. For county purposes alone, it probably means somewhere between $100 and $150 per household that we're not going to, that we will save. In other words, it's been pushed off to the rest of the county, to the other towns in the county, that we would have been paying. Bill, you want to say a few words about the school tax alone?
The school
I think.
tax alone, when you look at the Nyack School District and the Nanuet School District, when you look at everything, the average Nanuet person, because of the action we took, saving $650 on the tax bills that are due right now. That's the average per home. And the Nyack School District's about $500 a home is what they're saving because of the equalization rate going up. So you have those savings immediately to the school taxpayers. In addition to that, I'm estimating about $150 per household in county taxes that's going to go elsewhere in the county. So it was a big win financially for the town right now, but we have to be proactive, and I want to thank the board for being proactive, letting us do this. I mean, I can't remember, and I've been doing assessing since 1982, a rate ever being changed in Rockland County. So we were proactive, and it worked out, and we went to Albany, and we actually beat the system. There were 9 people there protesting. We were the only one that got everything else. Everything else was stamped by the board, and there were no changes. So it was a victory for Orangetown, one of the very few victories that we've had up in Albany over the years. But we got direct benefits to the school districts now. Everybody in the town benefits. And the other thing, too, very important that Brian said, is our state aid for the school districts. Not going to be cut that quickly now because of the equalization rate. And we have to go in and be proactive again, because people in Clarkstown, I know, don't like us right now, so they're going to be a little proactive. So we're going to have to look at something that I talked about last time, is these segmented rates for the Nyack School District and for Nanuet School District, where it crosses the town line. That's going to be a big issue coming up next year. So we have to start working on that now, because the state has sent out the notices already. Get all your sales in, because we're starting all over again. So it's an ongoing process. But this year, we were very successful, and thanking the board for supporting this. And we did it all without attorneys, that I can tell you. Thank you.
But it's not done yet, and I think one of the points that you wanted to make, and I wanted the board to hear a little bit about, is kind of what needs to be done in terms of reform. And I know that there were many meetings with Alan Jaffe's office. I know that we've scheduled a meeting with David Carlucci, our senator, for a week or so out.
I want to
What can you say about what you want the town board to support in terms of any policy or reform that would help prevent this kind of thing?
Well, we have, first of all, Nanuet, people in Nanuet, and they probably do know, this is a pilot with this IRG property, and they're set tax amounts. This year, the school is getting, I believe their payment is about $5.5 million. Next year, that payment is going to go down to less than $4 million, right? So right off the bat, this property is going to pay less to the Nanuet district. So that's going to affect their budget, regardless of the apportionment. So we have a problem, and taxes are going to go up. The problem is it has to go up fairly. So we know that there is going to be an increase. We just want to make sure it's done fairly. So we have a few ideas that we want to discuss with our legislators, because I think some of these solutions should be in law. In other words, there should be never a year where an equalization level increases more than a certain percent and results in a tax increase like, a proposed tax increase like this. That is just unacceptable. It's not logical, and it's not the way New York State should be run. And so that would be one thing. Put a brake on any increases from one year to the next. Also, perhaps, is that Hurricane Irma? I don't know.
Hopefully not.
Also, as far as base proportions go, there are limits to that already. We'd like to see lower limits. In other words, there's shifts to homes that can happen in any given year. In fact, we're going to have a shift internally with Orangetown this year, and primarily because of the Pfizer issue too, because of the pilot issue. But we're looking to limit that increase from year to year too. It doesn't do away with the increase, it just spreads it out into the future and makes it more palatable. So these are the kinds of things that we want to talk to the legislature about. Not a one-shot deal like Clarkstown got this year. They had special legislation because they saw that their base proportions were going to shift to the homes, probably 5%. And they had, the state legislature passed a special legislation that it could only affect them and a 1% shift. Now, to me, that's fine for Clarkstown. But we've been following this law for 50 years and doing it according to what the law is written. All of a sudden, the town gets special legislation. We didn't even know about this. They never told us. Why didn't we get included into that? I could have certainly mentioned that if they had asked. I didn't know you could even do that. But this whole deal with special legislation, you probably see it each year on legislative, the laws that are passed. There's series of individual special legislation for this person, that town, that village, that circumvents established law and goes around it. That's not good for confidence that you're going to follow the law, because if you don't like what the law says, guess what? You can have your legislator go around it and make an exception just for you. That's wrong. They should not do that. And if they're going to do that, at least inform the other towns that you're going to do that too. The other thing would be, as far as back to the equalization with market value and trending and all this kind of thing, why not trend the entire county, not just one town versus another town? Then you're going to have these intra-town shifts from one year to the next. Just say, guess what? The whole county went up 5%. Not Ramapo 7%, Clarkstown 0, and Orangetown 5. You know, we're a small county. Let's just do it. Guess what? You could save money. It makes it more efficient. The state is cutting down people in their offices, and we explained this at the state board meeting too. So hopefully they'll change their rules internally, or if it takes a law to do it, you know what? Do that. It makes more sense. And we won't have this kind of problem that we had this year.
Just to follow up on what Brian's saying, two big issues that came out of it. First of all, what's good for Clarkstown, if they get legislation passed, we should have the same privileges Clarkstown does here. So that's critical. That's number one. And then the second one is to put the limit. It was talked to both the Carlucci, Jaffe, and even Larkin's office on how much that equalization rate can shift on an annual basis.
Right.
So those are the two major legislative things that have to be done. And then the other thing that Brian's talking about, are these segmentations where the school district goes over the town lines. We really have to take a close look at that and be on top of that, because with the changes in the pilot agreements and the changes with the other special legislation, you have to have, it's like a 3D chess game following everything that's going on.
It's a little obscure, and it's, you know,
Listen, I really,
To do the segmentation, do we need special legislation, or you can just?
No, that's-
Just
it's a-
agreements between the
The
municipality? or the school district?
the segmentation is in the statute. The problem with the segmentation is who can ask for it, okay? So the school districts have a real hard time asking for it, because I can tell you, there's no more kumbaya than school board meetings, because you have a group elected from Orangetown, group elected from Clarkstown, and when it comes to taxes, they're at each other's throats, whichever gets the lowest. And that's what happened this year. So we got involved, and we did it all at the town level and helped out the Orangetown residents. So we have to get involved in the segmentation so we can get proactive up front, because if you're from the other town, you want to see Orangetown pay more taxes than Clarkstown.
Well,
So that's part of the.
basically what that means is that if you go through the steps, you can prove market value is different in that part of your school district than the rest of the town. You can get a special equalization rate just for the school. That's only used for that purpose. So we could have done that this year, but you have to prove that there is a difference of more than 10% in market value because of the taxes. Now, the taxes really haven't gone up in Nanuet until this year, substantially. Up to now, there's been a rebate program. So even if your taxes went up on your bill, you got that back. So now that rebate program has ended. In fact, that's another thing we want to talk to the legislature about. Essentially, that was an exemption program given to taxpayers across the state. They ended it this year. The 1 year we needed it in Nanuet and Nyack. It's over. So if you stayed within the cap, you got all your money back the last 2 years. So really, Nanuet taxpayers haven't seen any increase since the 2014 until now. We want to reinstitute that program or something.
because we've been
similar.
staying under the cap.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, if you're staying under the cap.
Right.
So
And
what happened was the state told us, stay under the cap and you're gonna get the money back. And guess what? It was good for 2 years, now we're staying under the cap and we get nothing back. That's what's happening at the school district.
Anyway, so we'll keep you informed, and we're working on it, so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks, guys. Okay, hold on, two of those.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, we're getting some drafts of resolutions for further down the agenda. But I think it's a good testament to you know, frankly, the collaboration between the town, schools, our political representatives, and the leadership of our department head in tackling an issue which is important to town residents, and we appreciate the results on that. Folks can read more about it in the newspaper. Our next item will be we want to invite the Rockland paramedics to present. How you doing? Welcome. Let me make sure we've got your materials here, okay? Because, all right, I'm not seeing it in this pile. Hold on a second.
You need copies of the,
Do you have any with you?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks. Hold on.
was out yesterday.
Thanks. Should we go that way?
Can you, oh, give me one more?
One more?
By the way, my name is Mark Siegelman. I'm the CFO of Rockland Paramedics. Ray Florida usually is here doing his presentation, but Ray is a little under the weather, so he asked me to fill in.
I'd just start
ready?
by saying we did meet
Yep.
last week. For the most part, and this is also just for the public, you know, these presentations are really more in the form of updates, where we see your numbers are usually fairly consistent year to year, but we also just want to hear how you're doing, any major challenges. Let the town board know what you think they need to know in order to understand your organization.
Sure.
The town has been contracting with paramedics for a long time. You're a vital part of the emergency responder community, you know, working with ambulances, working with police, fire, providing Narcan training and other services. I know you do a lot with mental health in the last year or so in terms of helping with
A couple
referrals,
years.
dealing with folks who are in crisis.
Right.
And so, but we kind of want to know where you're at with your numbers and what kind of budget dilemmas you
Okay,
face.
so what we're asking for this year is a 2% increase over 2017, which is about $24,632. The majority of that budget increase is attributable to Orangetown, and I think you get a subsidy from South Orangetown that pays for part of that increase overall. So the entire funding request is $1,256,256. Our biggest challenge is health insurance. Okay, we pretty much try to, cut costs wherever we can, especially overhead and administrative costs. There are certain costs that you have to give certain increases every year, 2% salary increases. Workers' comp and general liability goes up every year. But when it comes to health insurance, we won't get our renewal and other options that might become available till maybe mid-October. Last year, our increase was over 11.5%. This year, it could be anywhere from 10 to 15%, based on our claims experience. So health insurance is a pretty big benefit that we provide. It's a costly benefit, and unfortunately, a 2% increase in funding doesn't cover that. So that is something that we have to do as far as sharpen our pencils and try to cut costs in other areas, or actually dip into our reserves, which we have for several years. The other part of the budget that we always ask for is a sinking fund for capital equipment, which is primarily a new vehicle every 4 to 5 years, and a new monitor or Life Pack 15, which are very expensive. The cost of the vehicle has significantly increased over the last 4 years. So what we're asking for is an increase in our sinking fund capital budget to allow us to put money away every year so we can buy a new vehicle in 4 years. We did purchase a new vehicle this year, and it should be in service by the end of September for the town of Orangetown. Anybody have any questions concerning the budget request and any other fiscal matters?
Guys?
I'm good.
Thank you. I think the succinct presentation is really all it takes. We appreciate your intent to keep your budget increase modest.
Yeah.
As we're all trying to live under the tax cap and limit the increase wherever we can.
Exactly.
And we understand that does create some tough choices. Sometimes the town faces that, the contract agencies face that, and this is a time of year when we really hear about those and struggle with them.
Yeah.
And I know that
Exactly.
that you and Ray Florida and others in your organization are doing the same. And so we appreciate a budget proposal that's kind of within range of what we're looking for from our own departments, so thank
Right.
you.
Okay. That's it?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. How about back to South Orangetown Ambulance Corps? Um, I'll just start by saying thank you so much for your service to the town. You guys are an amazing organization. If we were to sit down and tell everybody here and on TV all of the benefits that you bring, it would take way longer than the 10 or 15 minutes we allot to this sort of nuts and bolts budget stuff. But we really want to express, I want to express my appreciation, I think on behalf of the town folk, for the service that you render, all the volunteerism that goes into it, the professionalism, and so thank you for that. So take us, all right, this is the next thing. I don't feel like I got, do we have the South Orangetown in here? No? Nope. All right, you're gonna have to do this verbally.
Not a problem. If you had last year's, we're pretty much right on with last year. Mr. Supervisor, thank you. Councilman, thank you. My name is Peter Romisher. I'm a resident of Blauvelt. I am the treasurer of the South Orangetown Ambulance Corps, and I have been selected by the Board of Directors to speak before you tonight, as I have for the past few years. We're joined by our chief, Steve Harris, of, is it an Orangeburg mailing address? And God knows, behind the Mountain House? And Ken Greenblatt of Tapan, our president. Representing the Board of Directors, a very strong board made up of nurses, retired firemen, retired policemen, the operation, the administrative officers, and the 70-plus members of the South Orangetown Ambulance Corps. 2017, we're looking to run about 2,200 runs by the end of the year. We're doing that with 6 vehicles. We're in year 3 of our remount program, so right now 3 2014 ambulances. Our emergency response MCI vehicle, which is still the 1997 International that houses all of our current MCI equipment that we bring to the rehab events, to the fire scenes, to the, hopefully the events that don't happen for a long time in town. So far, the remount program is successful. We're thinking we're gonna get at least another 2 years out of it, the 3 van ambulances that we're using, and hopefully we'll get more out of that. New additions to our 2017 have been a new first response vehicle, some new younger line officers that we have, so you will actually see 2 first response vehicles around town that are both fully equipped with the Lucas chest compression device, with the AED to add to the resources available to the town, and you know what makes this town such a strong first response area to live in, between our police, between our fire, between our ambulance, and the partners that we have in all the agencies. Our budget request for you this year is the same. I know you don't have it in front of you. Total budget request for 2018, $400,000. We come up with that number. Our total operating budget, $941,000, less our revenue recovery contribution of $541,000, gets to that $400,000 net number that we are again asking from the town. Off the top of my head, I think 1999 was the last time we asked for an increase in that number. And the revenue recovery program is working. As far as I know, you gentlemen don't hear complaints from the town residents and the constituents over it. It's been successful for the ambulance corps, it's been successful for the town, and it's been successful for the taxpayers, I think. New equipment that the Corps purchased this year, a 20 by 16 rehab shelter that you might have seen if you made it to the Gaelic grand opening. It's climate controlled, heat and air. We used it as a nursing first aid tent. We had about 3 nurses in there at a time. Between the EMTs, I think we had 2 crews working and others, and it was pretty successful. And that's available at a moment's notice. It's kept in that first response 1997 International vehicle, you know, whatever fire scenes or MCIs come up throughout the town. Our expansion program that we're purchased 58 Independence on a few years ago. We're still working on the funding for expanding the building. When we spoke at the town supervisors meeting with the finance director, you know, other options were mentioned, whether it's if the building department moved out of the Orangeburg Library or whatever happens with the expansion with Town Hall. But most likely, we will be working in the near future, expanding at 70 Independence Avenue, because that seems like it's the most fiscally prudent decision to make. The only issue that we've had that we spoke with the supervisor and finance director is a small boundary issue that I believe the police have now put to the town attorney's office that will be speaking the next few days, and I believe that is something that I'm happy to speak to you gentlemen at individually or late at time, and we can discuss it. But we are happy to serve, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, you guys come in every year, and we know you're not coming in for an increase because you guys do your recovery period, and it's amazing. Like every year, I don't have it in front of me, but I've talked to you on this so many times over the years. SOAC just is able to recover for the services they provide at an astronomical rate. You guys do a great job, and, a lesson on how to run an organization. We appreciate it.
Well said. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Joe, we're going to do in the sewer department now. Joe Moran's our commissioner. He has Mike Weber with him, our chief operator. I see Guy DiVincenzo there as well. While Joe is coming up to the podium, I just want to mention another important date this week for folks. You might have seen it on the internet. But on Thursday at 7 here in this room, we're having our first public meeting with the consultants that we are using our grant to hire to do bike and traffic safety inventory of town streets. So it's Thursday at 7 o'clock. I invite town board members, anybody in the public who's interested in bike safety, pedestrian safety, traffic calming, outdoor recreation, the kind of quality of life that brings, to participate in our bike study. And that includes opportunities for people to volunteer. If you have kids who want to do some volunteering work, or adults helping to participate in our count of bikes and pedestrians on sidewalks and at key intersections. So I just want to mention that. That's Thursday, September 7th at 7 o'clock right here in this room. Joe, the floor is yours.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to present the budget this evening and rescheduling that from Saturday morning. I'd like to give a little overview of the department. And first of all, I know there's been confusion in the past about the name of the department, DEME, Department of Environmental Management and Engineering. Two big aspects of the department. Environmental management aspect is the safe processing, collection, treatment, and discharge of sanitary sewage for the entire town. That is done by operating and maintaining a sewage treatment plant of 13 million gallons per day, 47 pump stations, 200 miles of sanitary sewer, approximately. All that has to be done in compliance with US EPA and New York State DEC regulations and requirements. The engineering aspect of the department oversees New York State mandated stormwater regulations, performs in-house designs for pump station upgrades, sewer rehabilitation projects, provides technical support for the department, and may include construction inspection and oversight of all townwide capital projects. Regarding our operating budget, some of the key elements of the operating budget this year, primarily due to retirement of several key employees, we've conducted over 30 interviews, filled 9 positions, and have almost established a new hierarchy of management of the department and of supervisors. Looking to backfill vacant positions. Currently, we have 3 positions open. I'm proposing tonight on the agenda to fill one of those positions, an assistant operator, grade 2, wastewater, with a candidate that we interviewed. The position was posted, and he would be coming off of a civil service list, so he would not even be provisional. He took the test, he passed the exam. We're also looking to fill the newly created position of public health engineer, and that's somewhat of an ongoing search at this point. Regarding the capital budget, over the last few years, the department's focused on rehabilitation of sanitary sewers in the Nyack area as a result of an order on consent by the New York State DEC. In order to comply with that order on consent, we felt that lining the sewers, rehabilitating the sewers through a non-invasive method, not excavating, was the best way to go. We've spent $3 million on that project, as you know, or a series of projects. It's coming to a conclusion. We will get a final report with the results within the next few weeks, and we have to report to the state on that. What we'd like to see, or what we'd like to do in the future at this point, is some sewers need to be replaced in South Nyack and Nyack, primarily because they are undersized. You cannot rehabilitate a sewer that is less than 8 inches in diameter. And we have several sewers less than 8 inches in diameter, and we've had some chronic problems there too. So we avoid open cutting and replacement whenever we can, but we're at the point now where we won't be able to much longer. In addition to that, we have had extensive conversations and discussions about an upgrade of our Scada system, our telemetry reporting system for our pump stations townwide or for the whole department. We're on an old 25-year-old antiquated analog technology that it would be a huge benefit to the department to upgrade that to a new digital technology. And we also need reporting at key locations throughout the treatment plant. We do not have any automation at this point at the treatment plant. There's a proposal on the agenda tonight for that item for the balance of the money that wasn't funded in 2017. Additionally, we have now, as part of our Speedies permit, our updated Speedies permit that we received, or revised permit that we received last December, we have more stringent discharge limitations for our effluent at the plant, particularly total residual chlorine. We are working on complying with the DEC's new lower limitations for that discharge. We have an estimate for the upgrades that will be required for that at $170,000 that we never knew was going to happen earlier in the year, but we have that in our capital request. And those are our primary concerns and needs for this year. The budget that's been submitted is virtually flat. And due to just our estimates as we went through our requirements and the new salaries that we have for this year. You may want to take a look at the organization chart. It's the first large sheet in the package that shows the vacant positions that we're looking to fill and the new public health engineer position with the salary grades along with that also, and the number of positions that we currently have and what we're requesting for 2018.
Joe,
And those positions are funded, by the way.
You brought the public health engineer. That's something I was pushing, but can you explain why we haven't actually hired someone yet, or explain what's going on?
Well, we only received 3 applications. One applicant lived in Colorado. One applicant has some environmental quality experience, not exactly what we were looking for. And another applicant has just basically worked within the field, but hasn't had any concentration on air emissions, environmental quality. So we're looking at either continuing the search or possibly another title where we can have somebody focus primarily on the public health aspect of what would be required for those duties.
Are we gonna have to repost it? Repost the position if you change the title?
Yes. If we change the title, we'd have to repost the position. That's correct.
Now, applications, I guess, is it that we didn't have enough money allocated to the position, or?
It could be possible, but part of the problem is this is a very narrow, specialized field. You know, it's an aspect of environmental engineering, chemical engineering, civil engineering. You don't really concentrate on this type of profession, or most people don't. That's why it goes back to the oversight used to be done by Rockland County, and there was only one person doing that for the whole county at that time when they had a public health engineer.
I wonder if it makes sense to in our effort to get a high quality person who can oversee questions related to emissions and hazardous materials and industrial processes, if it makes sense to revisit, obviously publicizing the position anew, but also the question of a consultant or a specialized service that would be on contingency or on call as a need arises. If that's something, to consider.
I think the whole idea was that we'd have someone that could deal with the environmental concerns of the residents and be here, and even if they're not dealing with concerns, they can, we have the consultant, he's gonna be looking at the code and upgrading. That would be the ideal role for him to segue into
Right.
working for the town, working with our consultant, doing the legwork and running with that, because that's something you don't want to be paying a consultant a lot of money to do the legwork. That's something that, if we have someone who has a lot of the characteristics and a lot of the qualifications, I think we try to get that person in here, and we try to get them, hit the ground running, because we want to get someone here that can deal with the residents' concerns, and I think revising the town code and dealing with concerns, environmental concerns, air quality concerns, just, and I think with the salary we have, you're not gonna get, everything that checks the box. You're gonna have to say, all right, he's got 75%, we might have to go with this guy, preferably someone younger who's gonna be with the town for the next 25, 30 years, That's my ideal candidate.
We also discussed having this individual work closely with Sandra Bonneville.
Right, I was wondering, maybe we
That's-
should set up a meeting with Sander and just pick his brain about the marketplace for public health engineers
It's worth
as well.
further consideration,
Yeah.
I think.
It's Sanders, for people to understand, is an environmental chemist who the town has hired to help us take a look at our town codes for performance standards related to industrial processes, and so maybe we can engage him a little bit on this question as well. Other questions from the town board regarding Joe's budget?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Joe, if we've looked at any of the local schools, the local colleges with engineering programs, to see if they have this typical major. And if we're looking at somebody younger and starting with somebody, maybe there's somebody who would be interested, or even interning or anything. I mean, because it doesn't seem like we're getting much back from our searches.
Well, our younger candidate did intern at the University of Buffalo with, I believe it's Erie County. I'm not sure. Whatever the surrounding county is within the greater Buffalo area. And he did some research projects in this field while he was a student. So that's why I was looking at that person at this point for this position.
Okay.
Might be a good moment, just because there's so much capital investment in running a sewer system. If we just had Jeff, if you would, our finance director, just talk a little bit about our bonding schedule and how, it connects with Joe's budget as far as what the town board is looking at needing to budget for the next couple of years.
Yes, as the board knows, we didn't bond last year for capital equipment or facilities, and so this year we will be bonding for that. And so the bond will typically be issued in the March, April timeframe, and so you won't get the money, excuse me, until that point. I know Joe had mentioned a number of capital ideas that I don't believe is in your budget, but that's in the bonded budget. So Joe, you may want to talk about what specifically you think is emergency. And the interesting thing about sewer bonding is we have been very successful in getting grant funding from EFC. So it's also important to try and go that route first, as long as they continue to do the 25% grant. So we may or may not include it in the overall bond, but we may do that separately with EFC funding if that's a better deal for us.
Jeff, I just want to point something out. Like, we're doing the presentations, and I think this is the second or third time I'm hearing we're bonding. That's something that will be decided by the town board, and so it's not a foregone conclusion what's going to be bonded for, if we're going to bond. These are presentations, but I don't think anyone on this board has seen what we're bonding for and what you're proposing, so it's a little putting the...
Yeah, that's actually why I wanted Jeff to speak to it, because the town has been on a pattern of every other year. And the town board is going to need to see the list, and we're going to need to review that for Demi, obviously for the highway department, parks department, and others, and then we're going to need to kind of back that into what we think we need to budget as far as debt service for 2018.
Do you have a total amount of the number that you are looking to bond for?
Well, I've been privy, obviously, to already meeting with all the different department heads and seen their requests and their capital requests, and obviously we didn't bond last year. So, we need to, well, of course, it's a board decision, but if we're going to repave roads, if we're going to, purchase new highway equipment, if we're going to do
What's the number?
my guess right now, the request is about $8 million for the next 2 years. That's the request. Now, that hasn't been reviewed and vetted and decided by the board what they're going to bond for and what they're not going to bond for. But certainly if we put that kind of amount into the operating budget, there's no way that we'd be able to stay under the tax cap. So it seems a fairly likelihood that we're going to have to bond for something.
Agreed.
How much of that will be determined by you guys.
All right.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate the interruption. I just thought it would be helpful to get some perspective on bonding, since that's such a big part of our operation here.
Jeff made a good point that I unfortunately left out. We have applied for grants for the $770,000 estimate for the upgrade of the treatment plant due to the reduced limit for our total residual chlorine discharge. And we've also applied for grants for several of the sewer projects that we're proposing in the capital budget.
Yeah, we appreciate the teamwork around that between your department, finance, grant writing, and of course it creates a lot of follow-up grant administration as
There's
well.
a lot of paperwork.
But when the numbers are the size that you're looking at, it really does seem worth it. So in the state, the Cuomo administration has dumped a ton of money into water quality, wastewater, infrastructure, and getting access to that money and having them do a 25% gift of the value of the project is certainly something worth trying to get participate in as a town. So I appreciate the extra effort that it takes from everybody on our team to complete those applications, to get them in on time. Vicky Caramonte in my office she just stepped out, but she deserves a lot of credit for keeping all the different grants on her radar screen and making sure that she coordinates also with our town attorney when we need specialized resolutions related to those. So thank you for doing that. It's saving our townsfolk some serious money.
Well, we're fortunate that that funding's available, and it was significant when it came to the sewer lining, as you know, with the
Right.
stormwater mitigation loan program and the funds that we received, the grant we received, and the zero-interest loan that we got also.
Right. Anything else the town board want to get some extra info about right now from Joe?
Nope.
You guys all set? All right, thank you. I know there's a lot more to the story. We appreciate
Yes.
that, and of course, this is for the benefit of the town board. So I'm sure you get follow-up emails and phone calls. So thank you so much, Joe, and thanks, Mike, also our new chief operator, for the good work you're doing for the town, and Guy DiVincenzo is right there as well. So please convey our appreciation to your entire team.
I echo those sentiments myself, to Guy and to Mike.
Yeah. All right, we good for
Thank you,
now?
guys.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Guy.
Okay. All right, so let's go back to our agenda and see where we are.
Number one? That's Rich.
There, we have a couple of inserts here, which we'll get to as we go along. There are a couple of items that are proposed for voting tonight at the workshop meeting for reasons that I'm sure the board will understand. They're kind of collected at the beginning of the agenda. So the first one has to do with the school tax collection, which has begun, and the services that the town is providing to the schools to get that money and get it over to them. And it describes the process a little bit here, and as there's been a need for really kind of an unusual amount of coming together and teamwork among the assessor and finance to make sure that function gets taken care of, we wanted to make sure that the board was fully aware and that it was written down here in terms of the segregation of duties and responsibilities, the involvement specifically of the director of finance in the final closeout. A lot of background bookkeeping takes place around the tax collection period, and we rely on our finance department to do that, especially when the receiver has been out sick, and in any case, it's complex and the finance has to step in. So this resolution authorizes Jeffrey Bensick, Director of Finance, and his department to complete the final closeout of the 27 school tax collection as prescribed by the Rockland County receiver. We had done this resolution before for January, but we just did it for January, so it expired, so we're just doing it again for this collection here. So I'll make a motion for this. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. And thanks again, Jeff, and also to the assessor, staff, and others. Number two, this is the customer implementation agreement for our LED streetlights. This is the conversion of 2,600 odd town streetlights to LEDs, savings in the neighborhood of how much per year, Jeff?
200,000 per year on conservative estimate.
So around 200,000, probably more. And that is, okay, so if you just, and so that's the acceptance of the customer implementation agreement. And we have the final wording on that from our town attorney right here, and essentially describes our contract with the New York Power Authority, the procurement process, who will be doing the work, and related matters. Jeff, why don't you just step up for a minute, because this is really important. This is not the first resolution the town has done related to this project. We've been working on it for at least a year, and we're getting close to the point where the installations will actually be taking place this fall. People will actually see the trucks out there, and they'll see the lights getting switched over. They'll notice the improvement in the lighting, and we'll notice the decrease in our lighting bills. But if you could just describe a little bit where we're at in kind of finalizing this.
Sure. We've basically come to an agreement with O&R to purchase the streetlights. We've done the bid through NYPA, New York Power Authority, who went out to different electrical contractors and got bids to replace all of our 2,200 and change streetlights with LED lights. And that's what you'll see in the backup is the cost of the purchase, also the cost of the installation, and then also included in this is a 10-year maintenance agreement. So this is soup and nuts. This is everything. Again, I said, conservatively $200,000 a year. They're basing their estimate here on a 4% interest rate. We issue bonds at 2%. So this is another thing. If when they want to roll this over, when they're all done and want to roll it over to long-term financing, if they're telling us it's 4% at that time, we may want to say, you know what, we're going to roll this over into the bond because we can put it in at 2%. So that's why I say it's conservative. They also have 10% contingency in here. There's a lot of areas here where this is sort of a worst-case scenario. And the process, once we've already, well, there appears to be one contractor that is the best, and I don't know if it's officially been picked by the board or not yet, but that one, again, they should take, I think, 75 days to complete the rollout. So this will be a fairly quick process. So if this is agreed to today, the idea is that this is all done and converted by the end of the year.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff. Appreciate all the work that's gone into this. And we've got a little ways to go, but it's really going to become a question of installation very soon. So I'll make a motion for this item. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second from Paul Valentine. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. So that's item number 2. Item number 3 is also about the streetlights. And this is accepting of the closing documents for the purchase of the existing lights from Orange and Rockland. So this is, it's pretty self-explanatory, I think. Any questions about this? Okay. Do I hear a motion for accepting the closing documents and authorizing me to sign and execute any related agreements? From Jerry Batari, second from Dennis Troy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you very much. We also have an insert here which is related to the Orange and Rockland and the Vegetation Management. I don't want to go into the sort of the long, drawn-out drama of this, but the bottom line is that Orange and Rockland has a rather draconian approach to removing any quote-unquote non-compliant trees, and there's been a tremendous amount of work. I want to credit Eric Gorton, Parks Superintendent, Vicky, folks from the Highway Department, all trying to figure out what's the best way to ensure that there's some kind of screening for our town residents who have come to expect that when they live along the rail trail where the power line goes over and a lot of this vegetation is to be removed due to ONR's policy and of course they say it derives from federal regulation. So in any case, we've gone back and forth a lot and tried to get them to pay for as much of it as possible. As you could probably understand, there's some costs involved in putting up a fence and stump removal and things like that. And so with the help of our town attorney and my assistant Vicky and Eric and others going back and forth, we did arrive at a number with ONR. It's $50,000, and we believe that that's a sort of a reasonable amount of money. We wish it were more because the costs of that screening and the fence are going to be substantial. But in any case, it's a lot better than where we started. So I'll make a motion that we accept this vegetation management agreement and pick up our check for $50,000 from Orange and Rockland to help pay for the screening. Do I have a second on that? A second from Dennis Troy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you very much to all involved. And also for the patients from the town residents, many of whom have really advocated for themselves and tried to understand these regulations and their impact on their properties. And again, kudos to our Parks Department. And the rail trail is a wonderful thing. People enjoy it so much. And we hate to have the experience tarnished by this kind of back and forth. So it would be nice to put this behind us. We also need this extension of the access agreement for J.P. Morgan Chase to the hospital site. The closing on that got pushed out by a week or so, I guess. I just need a vote to, we don't actually have the language in here, but maybe John, you could just verbalize something quickly for our deputy clerk to write down that will enable us. The point is that they've been on the site for a year or so, and there's still some runaround there pending the closing when they'll actually own it, and to have everything nicely sorted out legally, their access agreement needs to be extended by a week or so, as I understand it.
John,
So, John, do you want to?
How long you think?
you know,
I'd rather go
the
longer
access,
than
the access agreement is gonna merge into the closing. So they really haven't been on, they've been on the site since probably the third week in February.
Right.
So my suggestion is the following: resolved that the town board hereby extends the previously executed access agreement with J.P. Morgan Chase National Bank through and including September 30th. If we close in a week, 10 days, or 2 weeks, that access agreement merges with the closing documents, and it's and that, of course, is subject to further assurances with respect to insurance and indemnification. So there'll be a letter agreement which simply continues on the same terms and conditions the existing access agreement.
Can the clerk get that in writing?
Yes, thank you, Jerry, but that's the spirit of it. It's a relatively straightforward matter. So thank you. I have a motion from Tom Divany. Do I have a second? From Jerry Bottari. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. And we are just a week or so out from closing, knock on wood. That's a wonderful thing. We want to see the abatement and demolition and the data center get built and the town get its check for $7.5 million. Number 6, and onwards, let me just make sure.
There's one more to vote on at the end, right?
Yeah, we'll get there. And the resolution's already in there, so no more handouts. Number 6, this is a workshop item we've talked about a little bit before, and I think it's great that our building inspectors are requesting field computers, essentially tablets they can use to do data entry on the fly and review their inspection lists and have that information automatically kind of put into their software. It's one of the ideas that just came up when we were starting to talk about the budget, and I think we'd all support that. And obviously we have a great IT department, and they're ready to run with it. So I appreciate a motion to pass this from over here somewhere. From Paul. Oh, I'm sorry. Right. Any questions about this?
No,
All right. Appreciate it. So thanks for that. Number 7 is a tax cert. I think all the relevant information is there. So it's unfortunate. We have to get money back. It's not too much, though. Number 8 is accepting the resignation of town employee involved with records management in the police department, heading to greener pastures. Number 9 is, and after, there are several items related to very important events in the town of Orangetown, and we've got the Pearl River High School pep rally, we've got Sons of Italy with their feast, and we have the Orangeburg Fire Department's Halloween parade, and the town, as always, is providing critical support from the Highway and Parks Department and others. Number 12 is a 5K run walk family event over at Pearl River High School. And it keeps on going from there. There's a fire department holiday parade. We've got Pearl River Day, which is coming up soon. We've got the, we're back over, we should have consolidated these on the Italian Feast, Fire in the Sky event, the 10-mile run, which is happening, actually, maybe we should vote on this one tonight since it's September 10th is when it's taking place. If the board wants to. We're going to do retro, all right, fine. Number 18 is Car Show in Pearl River on September 17th. This is great to watch these dates and try to show up for these events and support these organizations. Number 19 is back on town operations, and this is a request for proposal for traffic signal installation, design, and construction services. And we need some more information about that, I think, which I'm sure will be forthcoming. Jim, do you want to speak to that question tonight? I know that the background of the story is the town has some very, very aging and outdated
actually,
traffic signals.
This one is specific to the Comet Road and 3rd Avenue.
Okay.
We want to have this in place, so if you make the agreement with JP, I think there's funding available there to replace that light.
Right, so we can get
You're gonna
started on
need
that
an
one right away.
engineering study. Yeah, so we actually sent this out to 3 different companies. 2 of them have responded. I don't have all the numbers in here yet because we need them to clarify a couple of things for us. But hopefully, this could be ready at the next meeting or the one after that, and you can pass it and we can let them go. Because it'll probably take them 2 to 3 months to get through the required information and make a final decision on what we're going to put in there.
Right. And since it's already paid for through our agreement with JP Morgan Chase, we might as well get a move on.
Yeah, we're not committed to anything yet, but this is, yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Number 20 is the auto show. Number 21, this is professional services for the telemetry upgrade that Joe Moran was talking about earlier. And, it's a substantial investment. I know that there's already a substantial amount of money in the budget for 2017 for these improvements. And this investment would go beyond what was allocated. There's currently $92,800 in the budget. Joe, maybe you should come up and talk to the town board a little bit about this project. It's not that we haven't spoken about it before. It's essentially to upgrade the capability of our various pump stations and control panels to talk with each other and enable staff to track the operations and be alerted to problems much more quickly and to direct their efforts more efficiently because of that information. Can you speak a little bit to the timing of this and where we're at, what we've accomplished so far, and what remains to be done?
To that effect, we had $100,000 allocated in the 2017 budget. We spent $7,200 for an evaluation with the approval of the board for the company that originally installed the Scada system at 34 pump stations some 20-odd years ago under Mr. Beckerly's direction and supervision and research, as a matter of fact, at that time, which was relatively extensive, that they were the best ones to do this work at the time. After they evaluated the system that we currently had, they came up with a plan of the best way to upgrade each one of the pump stations, and also identified the key locations at the treatment plant that should have a telemetry alarm be part of the Scada system. The balance of what would be required for the 2018 budget then would be the $282,000 some odd dollars to continue with that. And it really is, it's vital to the operation of the department in the sense that this would eliminate most of the false alarms that we have. This would cut down on manpower that would be required to do those investigations, and could also cut down on some of the overtime costs. So within several years, I don't have all the calculations before me, but I'm certain within 6, 7, 8 years, it certainly would pay for itself, and we'd be reaping the rewards of the savings from that point on, and having a much more efficient system. Could also potentially eliminate, or reduce the risk of us being fined by the DEC because of an overflow that we couldn't respond to in a timely enough fashion from having this antiquated system that we have now.
And I know it's a relatively sort of shallow thing, but having visited a few modern water treatment and sewer treatment plants, I mean, it just looks amazingly useful when you see a couple of big, huge screens that show all the pump station and their level of activity, how hard the pumps are working, and the other instruments that are out there along the sewer line showing their level of activity, and correlating that with rainfall and the times when there's a surge due to different kinds of weather events, and being able to see that visually, just from a non-expert's view. I'm imagining that would give the staff in your department a much better sense of control, and just sort of from the visual perspective, I think it's it's long overdue. I mean, the little terminals you guys are looking at almost looks like they're operating on a DOS system from when I was in college. So it does. I can imagine the difference it would make operationally, which is basically the argument you're making for this investment at a much more detailed level.
Yes.
But just for the benefit of other folks who maybe haven't had a chance to visit these kind of control rooms, ours looks really different from the ones that you see around, whether it's Lake DeForest and the water treatment plant there, or other places that are similar, moving a lot of water around. So on that one, are there any kind of questions or concerns? I mean, it is a pretty big number. It's something we've talked about. And I guess one question is, how's it going to hit our 2017 budget if we go ahead with this, or is this more of a 2018 expense?
Well, obviously,
Come out of capital.
is still in the budget. The remainder would have to be coming out of 280,000 or so. We'd have to find a fund balance.
From the sewer fund, yeah.
I'd have to relook at their budget. They're under on the salary lines because they've been missing 6 people for a long time. So they're, depending on what the rest of your budget looks like, there may be some additional money that I don't know.
Right.
Well, additionally with the salaries, the new hires or the new positions that we filled, the positions we recently filled, those employees are making significantly less because everybody that had retired or moved on had topped out at step 30.
Yeah. I know I've been supporting this for a while and working on it with Andy because I think efficiency through technology is the way to go. And your department needs it. You need our support with this, so I fully support this. And I'm okay with even spending it out of capital funds if we have to.
I guess the question, Jeff, just before we vote on it, let us know where the numbers are, so we know what we're looking at.
Not tonight, before next meeting.
Before next week. Sure.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
I'm looking to see.
Thank you.
There's also an item on here about the assistant plant operator, so you might as well stay where you are.
Sure.
And 23 also.
And maybe walk us through that item a bit, if you would. This is just background. This is an item which proposes salary change for assistant plant operators based on licensing requirements and the information that the plant it's scoring by the DEC is right on the threshold of being bumped to a plant that would require a higher level of licensing by the operators, which is, it's not this year, it's not next year, but with the increased stringency for removal of chlorine and other things, I know that
Right.
you've basically told the town board that it's a virtual certainty that the wastewater treatment plant's score would exceed the threshold, and that would require us to have assistant operators with wastewater 3 as opposed to 2 licenses. And of course, we're lucky because we have a chief operator with a 4. And so that kind of reality is what's underlying, I think, this proposal to, so if you could just speak to that a bit, that'd be great.
That's correct, and we've had many conversations about this and a lot of dialogue. But a point that I'd like to make right now that's never been discussed is that the level of responsibility at a grade 3 certification for an assistant operator will allow that person to be an acting chief operator in his absence currently before the plant upgrade. So what I'm saying is within the next 2 to 3 years, potentially if we had these gentlemen going into the grade 3s, that's the level of responsibility that they would have. They virtually could be acting chief operator also, and that's something that we never discussed, and that's a benefit to the town. If for whatever reason our chief operator had an extended leave of absence, or even if he had, a vacation and the DEC started questioning why there's no chief operator at the plant.
Joe, now we were at a 3, and we got knocked down to a 2. Like, what goes on? How did they decide, like, you're at a 3, now you need assistant plant operators at 3, and then you're at 2, and then you're back up at 3. What determines that?
Well, what happened was, the plant was a 4.
4.
And with the upgrades, with the new scoring, it became a 3. At that time, Rockland County personnel said, well, with DEC regulations, your shift operators or assistant operators, synonymous, they do not need to be grade 3 anymore. So your current grade 3s, the 2 grade 3s you have, will be grandfathered into that position, and once they retire, we're eliminating that title. That title goes away with them. So when that happened, we didn't have any salary progression at that point. Now, they were being paid at grade 15 also. And there were proposals at that time to upgrade the 15 to 17. And several members of the current board were involved with that, were involved with those discussions at the time also. But that's the history of it. And then we also had grade 3 trainees, which that is the title that 2 of the grade 2 operators held, and they were bumped out of that position. So because of the change in scoring and Rockland County's determination that that title wasn't required anymore, that's why we're at the position of grade 2s. And their salary is remaining the same whether they become a grade 3 or not, because there is no civil service title or position that recognizes that. So it would be up to the town to recognize that, because as far as the county civil service goes, the salary is set by the municipalities or the school districts or, the individual entity that's underneath their civil service commission. They only evaluate the titles and the positions, not the salaries.
In the past, though, the trainees were paid the grade 3 because they were taking the class. These guys are going to be required to have the certification before they get the grade, which is different than it was in the past, correct?
That's correct. They will need the certification in order to get an upgrade. That's correct. And it's not just the class, like you said.
And
It is the test, which is a difficult test.
And no one has it right now except for, he has a 4.
Except for Mike, who's a
He's
4.
above that.
Correct.
One other question, Joe, because I don't think I really understood the answer if you gave it to Tom's question on how do they determine whether we go from a 2 to a 3? Like, is it amount of flow? Is it the
What are the
quality
criteria?
of, what is the criteria? How do they just come down and say,
You're a 3.
you're a 3, you better get new people? Like, how do they do that? There must be a criteria, right?
Well,
You
there's
talk about the scoring of the plant then,
Yes.
which is the
Yes.
state. Yes, there's a whole checklist of numerous, it's 2 or 3 pages long. There's 40, 50 items that you check off. What your process is, what you have at the plant, and it's given, each one of those individual items is given a score. It's actually online.
All right, so now I gotta ask you another question.
Okay.
Since we're not changing anything, how do they change us from a 2 to a 3?
How they change it? Well,
Like, how do they change you? Like, it,
3 or 4. What is the
okay, from
state?
a 3 to a 4,
the
you know what I
plant,
mean, John?
Right, the plan would be going from a 3 to a 4.
Because we're doing the same
Because-
process, right? We didn't change the process.
But you
Right
are
now-
changing things.
Right now, we haven't.
But we're upgrading.
But-
It should be going the other
All
way.
right, we'll let Joe answer.
But yes, with the total residual chlorine limitation requirement, the plant most likely will not go from a score of a 3 to a score of a 4. But once we get into the nitrogen and the ammonia requirement, which is another 2 years or so down the road, most likely it will go from a 3 to a 4. Adding in the additional processes that will be required now for the total residual chlorine. That in and of itself won't change the scoring, but when you combine the two, it's extremely likely it's going to exceed. The score was 75, and right now the plant is 72.25. I mean,
Right.
it's very close
Okay.
to a 4 at this point.
Just, I think it was very short-sighted on the part of county personnel, very short-sighted. When, because of improvements to the plan, the DEC reduced the grade of the plant from a 4 to a 3. County personnel, for its own reasons, then said, there are no assistant operator wastewater 3 positions, leaving us facing the prospect in the future that it gets upgraded because the DEC can change its regulations, its requirements, can change the point structure, and we're on a bubble at 72.5, roughly 72.5 points. They said, nevertheless, when the existing 3s retire, there will be no more 3s. We debated that, we went up to personnel, debated that a number of times, and they wouldn't hear of it. But again, as Joe said, they don't control the salary structure. So we can have, and this actually will be Assistant Plant Operator 2 wastewater, the existing title with a Grade 3 certification, which is a DEC certification. It's not the Civil Service Assistant Operator 3.
Right.
This will protect us in the future if and when the plant gets upgraded for any reason. And will further provide an incentive for individuals down at the plant to get the certification, which hopefully will help reduce the overtime, because presently we pay a lot of money out in overtime for those who, for the shift operators.
Aren't the 2s just becoming 3s, now we're paying them more for overtime, John?
What is
Am I
that?
confused? Aren't the 2s becoming 3s, and now we're just paying them more for
The
overtime?
2s are not becoming 3s. The 2s are staying at 2s.
2s, but with a kicker, so they get more
Correct.
money.
If they pass the 3,
If they
they get
pass
paid
the
more.
3. No, I
And
understand
then their
that, I'm
overtime
just saying, I
costs
don't know
more
how
too.
that cuts overtime.
No, but
Maybe
the
that's
issue
what
is
confused.
you need more people
You need
going
more.
for the 3. There's nobody,
We
right
can't get
now,
anybody to go for the 2, Dennis.
well, that's a problem.
That's the
That's
point.
where the incentive
So
comes
you
in.
think if you give them a 3, they're gonna go for the 2 and 3?
It gets other people, we just had a discussion earlier, about people going, looking to get upgraded and going from other departments. What this does is, to me, it gets people who are better able to pass tests and get these certifications. And right now, you got a roadblock where you have people at 1s are staying at 1s, the grade 1, and the other people at grade 2s are staying at the grade 2s, all right? You need an incentive to get people who can actually pass these tests. And that's what this is supposed to do. And that will
Okay,
cut,
I can't wait to see how it's gonna reduce overtime.
and that will
But
cut
that's-
overtime.
I think education is a good thing, and I think an incentive is a good thing, I'm just not sure how this would ever cut overtime. but
No,
that's-
the cutting overtime part is hiring another
hiring another
operator.
operator.
It's really, this is, obviously, if their salaries go up when they get a higher level license, it's gonna increase their costs to the town, including their overtime. It's the hiring of a operator, because right now the team is down, and it's generating a lot of overtime.
No.
The bottom line here is that we're gonna need the 3s eventually, right? So we might as well get.
The question is timing, though,
Well-
and one question I think the town board needs to look
My
at.
point is that why not give them the incentive to get it now rather than later?
That's the theory of this resolution. One might also say, well, it's a few years out. If the town needs 3s, we'll go find them when we need them. I think that would be the
Yeah,
debate
but
in a nutshell.
just so you understand as well, the grade 3 certification is not something that can happen overnight. There has to be experience for periods of time at the different levels. So again, that's why it was short-sighted by county personnel. What do they care if we have a plant rated 3 and we have operators at the level 3? Why do they care? They do. It's as simple as that. The only other thing I would mention is before you adopt this resolution, obviously, because it affects a contractual grade, we need to negotiate with and the consent of the CSEA. Now, we've had contract negotiations on this item, and I think as well, it's been to labor management, or it's before labor management. So we're going to have to change the resolution before next week. We're going to have to firm up with the union because we'll get a grievance. Yeah.
If county had a problem with the grade 3 before, how
There's still a
Because
grade
it-
two.
different opinion this
Because it's a grade 2. It's a
It's a
grade 2,
with a certification.
and we have a salary condition of the grade 3. They don't care about that.
Right, we're not changing the title, because we can't.
Thank you for that. The number 23 is the appointment of David Alvarez after a search and interview and back reference checks, so on and so forth, as to add to the team of assistant operator grade 2s, grade 14, step 1, at a salary of about $64,000. Of course, he and the others, if we do the other resolution, would be eligible to go to a 17 if they pass the test.
That's correct, he would be eligible, that's right.
And if some do and some don't, some will be paid as 17s and others will be paid as 15s. Right.
14s.
14s, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, 14, thank you. So that's what that one's about. That takes care of you for the time being. Thank you, Joe. You've had
Thank you.
a lot of,
Thank you.
done a lot of airtime tonight. 24 is approving the appointment of Jane Slavin as the Director of our Office of Building, Zoning, Planning, Administration, and Enforcement. And that's on a workshop tonight for a vote next week. And I'll just say that the town, everybody knows that John Giardello's shoes are big ones to fill, and the town has found a wonderful candidate to do that, of course, in her own way. And we've had a bit of discussion, and folks have made comments related to how best to find a successor and what those qualities should be. And I think that they're well represented in Ms. Slavin, and we'll talk a little bit more about when we appoint her next week. And she'll be with us, and we can introduce her to folks who haven't had a chance to meet her before. But she really did stand out among all of the candidates that we interviewed, both architects and engineers, many of whom really were outstanding in their qualifications. And Jane really, I think, really persuaded the board of her capability of running that department in a way that none of the others could do, due to her level of experience. So we'll look forward to bringing her on board next week.
John, do we have like a contract yet, or a proposed contract?
Elements such as salary,
Salary, term, you know, those are the big ones. No? All right. What's that?
yeah.
But you need an agreement to be, you know, like,
Yes, it is what we've all been.
we've been discussing, but we need to see the form. Like, we need to see the contract so we can review it. I mean,
Before next meeting.
Before next meeting, because if we're asking someone to pack up their practice, they're gonna wanna see a contract before they'll do that. Because, you know, the term's gonna be a big item. The salary's gonna be a big item, you know, and any other thing, so.
You know, it's actually interesting. I've had probably about four
you know.
conversations with Jane about this, and not once has she raised the question of, is this agreement good for a certain number of years? So we should look at
I
that.
think it's gonna be raised.
But that was,
I think that's,
you know, Tom, you're quite right to ask that question. It's a civil service position, and I'm not sure
it's not-
if, you know, exactly how to handle that, if
Civil
that's a
service?
requirement.
No,
Uh,
it's not. Tell Vicky to stop screaming.
Yeah. I'm not sure that the, I'm not sure you do have it. I mean, John G. had a job letter, but I don't think it was
I thought
for a
John
period of
G's,
years.
I didn't like the way that thing was written.
Yeah, well, it was pretty minimal and vague anyway.
We gotta find out what we're doing.
Um,
All right,
But the material elements anyway, as far as who she is and her credentials and salary and all that have been discussed pretty thoroughly. Number 25 is granting permission for Donna Morrison to go to a human resource law seminar, which is great, professional development work. Number 26 is the appointment, this would be for tonight, because she's critical to our team of people collecting taxes for the school system, appointing Caitlin Morrison, senior clerk, less than full-time provisional, effective September 6th, and it's a little description of the grade and step, and typically with this situation, she'll work full-time hours during the collection period, but she's a less than full-time employee, so she'll work less than full-time at other times during the year. So the salary will be prorated accordingly. And I would offer that for a town board vote tonight to make sure that we've got adequate staffing collecting taxes from folks. So I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
From Tom Divany. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. So
That's you.
please let the record reflect that we actually voted on that one. All right. Now, I know that there was discussion of having an executive session tonight on a couple of different items. One of them would be the CSEA contract, and having a conversation with our council and Teresa on that.
Well, we don't have the language yet.
I'm trying to think what the other items were. Do we need to have an executive session? I'm trying to. Talking about Jane's terms?
What are we actually discussing? Should they be discussed out here, or they should be discussed in there?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what aspect of it needs to be an executive session. Yeah,
Oh, I don't think we need to.
I'm
do
not
that.
sure there's more about High Tour that needs to be done in an executive session, really. I mean. No, I mean, they're asking for a budget increase. They have, you know, they talked
discussed out
about it
here.
today publicly. I don't think there's
Yeah, I think
any,
tour would be out here.
yeah. So I'm trying to think. That's High Tour, basically. And I'm happy to tell people our meeting with Ed in public session. I think we already talked about it a little bit. Maybe you were out of the room.
Did we have to vote on 26, Andy, before we do anything else?
We did.
Oh, we already did.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
You voted
Yeah.
yes.
I voted yes.
Thank you, though, because sometimes we forget. Yeah, so I'm trying to remember. I had in my mind that there was an executive session required tonight, and I can't remember.
We have a meeting with CSEA tomorrow, Teresa.
Yeah.
There were items we wanted to discuss tonight so that we could.
Get ready for the meeting with the union tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
All right, well, I'll make a motion that we have executive session to discuss the town board's position relative to the CSEA contract with our council. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Divany. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There will be no further business following this executive session. I was just going to leave those till next week. Yeah. I think there are going to be a couple others that are going to go on there too. Oh, guys, Jerry, I didn't actually make the motion to adjourn the meeting. So motion to adjourn, second from Tom Divany. All in favor, say aye. The ayes have it.